Hey everyone, welcome to Pitching Pundit. Today I'm going to go through the 6 primary pitch types in baseball. Now there are variations of these and each individual makes them their own in slightly different ways, but on the whole you can break down the vast majority of pitches thrown in baseball to these 6 different pitch types. So let's get started. The first pitch type is a four-seam fastball. What is a four-seam fastball? In essence, it's having the 4 seams of the baseball matching up with the direction of the spin, and it's typically the hardest pitch thrown by every player. Most pitches thrown in professional baseball are fastballs, and the youngest players start off throwing fastballs as well. It's just the most natural pitch. The second pitch type is a sinker. A sinker is a variation of the four-seam fastball. Instead of a 4-seam rotation, like we have on the 4-seam fastball, we switched the grip, and now we have a 2-seam rotation on the ball. This is also incorporated with slight differences in how the throw is completed, and what you end up with is a pitch that moves differently than the 4-seam fastball. So where a 4-seam fastball tends to stay on plane, and really we try and have it go straight with maybe a little bit of tailing action to it, the sinker, the 2-seam fastball, we want to see more arm side run, and we want it to look like it's moving in this manner where it's almost falling, sinking down relative to that 4-seam fastball. It provides pitchers with another hard, high velocity offering that has a distinct movement pattern so that you can throw off the hitter's perception, making them think that it's still going to move straight, but it moves differently and they can hit it into the ground. That's the general purpose of the 2-seam fastball, of the sinker. Number 3, we have the cutter. The cutter is a more advanced pitch that you typically see at the professional levels and maybe in college and occasionally in high school. But when we're talking about a cutter, the cutter is also referred to as a cut fastball. Why is that the case? Because it's a variation of the 4-seam fastball. So whereas the 2-seam fastball, we're trying to add more arm side run and a little bit of depth, the cutter, we're trying to make move to the glove side and stay as much on plane as the 4-seam fastball as possible. So again, what we end up with is a hard pitch. We have our 4-seam fastball that's typically straight. We have our sinker that moves down an arm side relative to that 4-seam fastball. And then we have a cutter that moves similar to the 4-seam, but moves at the end towards the glove side of the plate. The movement difference between the 4-seam and the cutter is often small, though the best pitchers have a large difference, and it can be incredibly difficult for hitters to recognize, making it all the more difficult for them to hit. The 4th pitch type is our first true off-speed pitch. It's the changeup. So the changeup is a slower version of a fastball. You'll hear people describe the changeup in a lot of different ways, and there's so many different types of grips out there in order to make the pitch effective. But one of my favorite descriptions of a changeup is a fastball that isn't. It makes great sense once you really understand the purpose of the pitch. The changeup is meant solely to deceive the hitter into thinking a fastball is coming, but instead you have removed velocity from the pitch and it's slower, so it disrupts the batter's timing. Now the changeup grip, the typical general basic changeup grip, is more of a circle changeup grip. But again, there's a lot of variations, and we'll cover those variations in another video and go into more detail about that. But the movement of a changeup, because you've slowed the pitch down, you've removed velocity from it, and at times you alter the direction of the spin, so you create a different movement pattern. What you have now is you have a fastball that moves straight, a sinker that moves arm side and down off of that, and then you have a changeup that moves arm side and drops even further relative to the fastball. So now you have a pitch at the top, a pitch with a little less carry to it, and then another pitch that falls off even more. Again, you can start to see the pattern here. We're trying to keep pitches similar until the end when they end up different, so it's hard for the hitter to recognize them and hit them. The 5th pitch, a slider. A slider is generally thrown at the collegiate level and professional levels, though high school players are beginning to throw them far more often than they used to. A slider is a very, very, very hard breaking ball. Typically, it's a gyro spin pitch, meaning the spin axis is parallel to the direction of the velocity of the baseball, and the movement will appear to move to the glove side of the plate. So what you end up with is a pitch that stays on plane and then drops and moves to the glove side visually. Again, you end up with a large separation from the four-seam fastball. And because this is a high velocity, off-speed breaking ball, it is very difficult for hitters to hit it because they still have to respect the higher velocity component of it. There's a recent trend in the game to throw what's called sweeping sliders. This is a different variation of the traditional slider. That's the high velocity pitch that moves a little bit to the glove side and has that downward break to it, where you remove some of the velocity, so it's a slower pitch, but what you gain is a large amount of movement in the horizontal direction. This is a variation of the same pitch, and they're often thrown very similarly, but the intent and the result of the resulting shape is actually substantially different. But we can still classify them as the same pitch as sliders because of the commonalities in how you throw them and how you make the pitches move at their core. So again, in a future video, we will go into more detail about how to create those different movement patterns and the grips that we can use to get there. Number 6, the final pitch type is a curveball. As with changeups, there are numerous different grips out there for how to throw a proper curveball. We'll cover some of those examples in a future video. However, the general idea of a curveball is that we have a pitch with topspin. So instead of a fastball that has backspin so that it's resisting gravity and really generating life and staying on plane through the zone, the curveball falls off the table because of the topspin. Now, you can have a wide range of movements because most curveballs also have a side spin component to them where they also move to the glove side. But the combination of topspin and side spin makes the curveball the largest moving pitch in most pitchers' arsenals. You end up with a very, very large separation from the four-seam fastball, and curveballs are typically one of the slowest pitches thrown as well. Sometimes you'll see them in the low 70s at the major league level, even though a pitcher can throw in the low to mid 90s. Some curveballs, though, can still be up to like 86, 88 miles an hour and still have this really large downward moving action to them. Those are basically unhittable. It's incredible what pitchers are able to do. So there you have it. Those are the 6 primary pitch types in baseball. I'll make a video that covers in more detail each of the pitch types and discuss different grips, methodologies, intents, and how you can throw and learn the pitch yourself. Stay tuned for more, and thanks for watching.